There's certainly many key takeaways, but I've boiled it down to really three main things I've learned helping implement production planning with retailers. And one of those key takeaways is that fresh operations are very unique by each retailer and by each of their departments, and oftentimes even by stores within their departments and organization. And what I like to boil that down to is it's not a one size fits all approach that will work for everyone. And you have to be able to be flexible with whatever tools you're implementing in order to see success in these areas. And, to dig a little bit deeper into that, retailers have different strategies, oftentimes by their departments. Couple of examples of that is a bakery. We have some clients that have bakeries that have a thaw and serve model where they just order product in, thaw it out 24 hours in advance, and then serve that to clients by packaging and putting a label on it. We have other clients that in their bakery, they might do par baked items. So bread that comes in partially baked, they bake it off and then package it for their clients. We have others that will use a commissary approach. So they have a commissary they may run themselves where they're producing from scratch different baked goods and then shipping that out to the stores. And then we have other clients that are going to do scratch baking in the store directly. So maybe that's their differentiator that they pride themselves on making sourdough bread from scratch in store every single day. And that's just in bakery. All those differences can exist. And we do have clients that will do a blended model of quite a few of those different things. So when you think about that, and then you start thinking about all of the other different fresh departments like meat, like produce, all of a sudden these complexities build and build. And that's what I mean by you've got to have a flexible tool and a strategy in order to roll these things out. It's not enough just to take a blanket approach and think that every client's bakery is going to be the exact same as the next one. And it's also really important to find in a long term tool set, which I think we've done really well with our clients. And part of what's made us so successful with our production planning tool is that we do have the flexibility to help in these different models by department. So that way, if I do a thaw and serve model today in store, 5 years from now, I could go to a scratch baked model and I don't have to feel like I've got to completely re implement tools that are already in place today. Instead, I can just reconfigure the tools and roll out new features and enhancements. One of the second key takeaways that I've had is that fresh is extremely complex. And what I like to say to people is, no, really, it's extremely complex. I've learned that when I first started with the company, I thought, oh, you see cookies on the shelf in a grocery store as a shopper, and you take that for granted. You don't understand all of the prep work that goes into getting those cookies on the shelf. And a few examples that come to my mind when I think of fresh complexities are managing different shelf life. So some items need to be produced daily, some get produced every other day. Managing that different day of week demand across the store and those different shelf lives can be extremely complex. Also, managing and trying to forecast for items sold by weight is very different than items sold by each. So that's another major complexity that grocery retailers face, especially in the store. Other examples could be potentially selling grab and go sandwiches in an end cap and then in another part of the store. And then also having bread in the bakery that's being produced not just for the bakery, but also for those grab and go sandwiches. And then trying to manage inventory across all these different scenarios. It really builds and adds to a lot of complexities that go on and a lot of nuances that need to be considered. I see a lot of times when new partners try to come in and help grocery stores with their fresh departments and the fresh perimeter, a lot of times they take this for granted as well. And these things truly have to be considered. Otherwise, you're not helping the stores with the parts of their daily lives and daily operations that they need the most help on. And that really takes me to my third key takeaway that I'll share today, which is that driving results requires driving adoption. And part of what I mean by that, and part of what I recommend to every client I work with rolling out to production planning, is to really think about it from the store user's perspective. And when I say that, I mean, what are the things that are really going to help them in their daily lives? What are the tasks that we can either help take time off of. We can shorten those tasks for them, make their day easier. What are the tasks that are really difficult and complex for them today that maybe we can make that a little bit easier through providing technology and a production planning tool? And if you can think about it in this way in terms of how do we truly help the store, if you're giving them a tool that really helps them, then in turn they're really going to want to use it. And them using it is really key at store level to getting that adoption to ultimately driving your return on investment that you're trying to get out of a production planning tool. One really great example that comes to mind recently that I'd like to share is about change management and also not trying to throw too much on a store at one time. A lot of times when people are trying to blend new technology and change store processes, I can see different retailers trying to go overboard on those two things and try and do too much at once. And a great example is we had a client recently that wanted in their cut fruit department to go to a multi-day production run. So that way they could help drive sales. And as customers walk through the store, they're seeing their store associates cut fruit more often, giving that fresh ambiance to the store. However, when we did a discovery, we learned that the store is only producing that cut fruit once a day, and that's the only way they've ever produced it. And as a recommendation for them to roll out, we started implementing with just one run a day to get the stores comfortable with the tool, get comfortable with the forecasting and how we do that with production planning. And then now we've started to layer in that multi run after our initial implementation. And that's been really successful with them to helping get the store adopting the solution and then layering on changes and configurations as we go along.